The new utils can be downloaded from our website. If you go into the support section, you can find the ANB utils page and the download link. Once you've downloaded it, you unzip it into the desktop, into its own folder. You can open the executable and you get this command line prompt window like this. First thing it asks you to do is to choose your COM port. So for this one, we're going to go for COM6, which is option 3 here. Once you've chosen the COM port, all the information about your sensor comes up. So it gives you the baud rate, the PCB version, serial number, and then it tells you firmware that you're running on the sensor and the current status, whether the sensor's idle or running. So one of the new features of version 2 of utils is it tells you if you've got the latest firmware or not. So if you're not running the latest firmware, there's a red message comes up there asking you to update your sensor, and we'll run through that later. We've tried to make that much easier to do. One of the biggest changes of this version of utils is that we've changed the way you set up the sensor. So for those of you who used the sensor previously, we had different scan commands depending on the salinity and the deployment method. And we heard from customers that sometimes it was a bit difficult to know which scan command to choose. So we've tried to simplify all of that by using these measurement settings options. If you choose one here, it tells you what the options are that's on the sensor already or the factory settings of the sensor, and it asks you if you'd like to change these. So if we say that we will change them, we'll go through the list of options that you can change.
The first question we ask about is the deployment interface. The sensor works on both terminal and Modbus interfaces, and you can set the sensor up according to how you want to deploy it. In this case, we're going to use terminal. If you select Modbus, you can keep changing the settings of the sensor until you turn it off and on, in which case it will be Modbus ready. The second question talks about a controlled autonomous mode. These are exactly the same as their previous firmwares. The controlled is where we can send a scan command either through terminal or Modbus. And autonomous, you simply apply power to the sensor and it starts measuring. You can use this on the terminal interface where it streams data while it's monitoring in autonomous mode, or in Modbus mode you can ask for data, and that's a demo we'll be showing later on the Modbus interface. This is a new feature where we're asking customers, are you going to need the sensor always powered or turn it off and on between measurements? These platforms are very power sensitive platforms, and we understand that you may not want to run the sensor continually. This is important information for the sensor because it allows it to run optimally both for accuracy and longevity. In this case, we're going to be always powered. We ask if you're in low or high salinity. These are the ranges that we currently set the sensor to. In the future, we'll be looking to take this command out where we can work across all salinities with a single command, but for now it's low or high salinity. Whether you're powered or you turn off between measurements, we will always ask you your interval time between measurements. This allows the sensor to work to its best of its capabilities for both stability and longevity. So please enter this even if you are intermittently powered. We have a fast profiling mode which allows the sensor to respond to rapid changes in pH quicker. This is at the request of a customer who are looking at subsea cement jobs, where they wanted to look at cement returns in a quicker process than the sensor traditionally does.
Okay, so once you've chosen all your settings, the sensor comes back with this configuration string, which we'll go into a bit more detail about in a little while. It also gives you a summary of the deployment settings that you've chosen and tells you how to start scanning the sensor, and also gives you a reminder to run the abrade command if you've just abraded your transducer. We recommend that before you deploy the sensor, you lightly abrade the transducer surface and run an abraded command. This just kind of resets the sensor settings inside to make it run perfectly from the start. So if we go ahead and start scanning, we go to command line prompt, option 3. In here, we've got a small menu with the start, stop, and abrade commands. There's also 6 other settings that you can look at or change. Version, time, and baud, and Modbus address you can change. The last 2, you can turn off or on the SD card. So inside each sensor, there's an SD card which saves all the data. And this process is quite power hungry. So some customers have asked for the ability to turn this off because they can save the data another way, and this kind of allows them to save some power. Also, the sensors have an onboard immersion sensor. so that it only starts running if it's immersed in water, and this can be enabled or disabled depending on your preference. Okay, so to start the sensor running, we just type start, and we wait for the live data string, or we can open the GUI here. While we're waiting for the sensor to do its reference checks, we can talk a little bit more about this configuration string here. So we've added this. We've got lots of customers that have got multiple sensors and they want to configure them all quicker than this. I think the best way to show you this is from our website. If you go to the user guides, you'll see here configuring multiple sensors. You can create an ini file, so a .ini just in Notepad, where you have the baud rate, the COM port, and then you can have a list of commands with an interval of a timeout in seconds. And you just run this ini file from a command prompt or PowerShell, and this allows the sensor to be set up with whichever commands you've put in there. And one of the commands it allows is the utils configuration string that we saw in the utility. So once you've got this string, which tells the sensor if it's controlled or autonomous and profiling mode and all those other questions that Nathan went through, if you stick that in the commands line there with a timeout of 2 seconds and run the ini file, it will automatically put those settings into your sensor. So this is a kind of quick method for those customers that have multiple sensors that they want to set up in the same way.
This will also allow you to set the settings like the SD card being switched off through that ini file, the immersion being disabled, and change the Modbus all through this ini file. So it's a really quick and easy way to interact with the sensor if you're an integrator. And as Kay said, when I set up multiple sensors in exactly the same way.
Here's a couple of examples. So this one is just using the configuration string from utils, and this is using the other commands semicolon separated. The sensor started to show the data. The output information is all on our website, but we've got pH here, temperature, then salinity and conductivity, which are 99s because it's in seawater. If it was in freshwater, we'd have some numbers here. We've also got this new column of data here, which is actual conductivity.
So we generally give out specific conductivity, or we used to. Now we give both specific and actual, so temperature compensated and actually compensated to the temperature that you're measuring.
So I'll just stop this for now by the stop command, and then we can have a look at how to see the data. If we go back to the main menu, there's 2 ways of looking at the data. You can download the CSV data from the sensor, which is option 4, which we'll go through first. You just choose 4, and this tells you all the data files that are on the SD card there, and then you can choose which one you want to download. I won't do that now because it takes a bit of time, but once you've downloaded it, a data file appears in your utils folder, and in the data file will be all your CSVs. The other way to look at the data is the new feature of version 2 utils, which is backing up to the ANBcloud. So if I choose option 5 here, this gives you a URL, but if we go to that, it's an encrypted URL which is related to the sensor serial number, and it backs up all your data. It allows you to download each CSV, delete them, or there's a share link button so you can share it with your colleagues. So hopefully this is a new useful function. We've been asked for methods of sharing the data between institutes or within institutes. This is the start of the cloud-based system for us. We're planning to move into charting and developing this more, but we're going to be guided by our customers. So it'd be great if you could use this feature and let us know what you want to see here, what would be useful for you. The last thing to show you is the installing new firmware. It's option 2 on the main menu, and this you can download and install it straight from our website. I won't do this now because it takes a bit of time, but if you click yes, then it just goes through the 2 firmwares and upgrades your sensor one at a time. You just follow the on-screen instructions, but it's very simple. We are aware that we have been doing firmware upgrades quite regularly, so we've tried to make this really as simple as possible for our customers.
Yeah. So we should say that all new sensors going forward that are delivered from us will have a way that you shouldn't have to touch the sensor during the bootload process. So it will completely upload the firmware and reboot itself completely autonomously from you, so you won't need to turn the sensor on off. They're only on new deliveries, as we've changed an internal setting on what we're delivering out there now. But just follow the on-screen instructions, as Kay said, for the sensors that you have out there. You'll certainly see a reduction in the number of times you have to interact with the sensor as you move forward when you're doing the upload process to make it smoother and simpler. So we've been asked over the last 3 to 6 months about our Modbus functions, and we've actually learned quite a lot. So today we're just doing a little demo of a sensor that's in autonomous mode. So we've changed the way that we work in Modbus interface, and this is based on really customer feedback. When the sensor was doing its reference check, it would output 99.99, and we understand that was quite a confusing message, seeing as it's one of our error codes or out of range codes. Now, when you start the sensor, you'll get a standard Modbus exception saying the sensor's either busy or waiting to be started scanning sequence. Once the sensor starts scanning, you could send a Modbus register read request. In this case, we're reading a whole length of data string, so we're outputting temperature, pH, salinity, conductivity. You can see the full output on the left-hand side and the interpreted on the right-hand side. We can look at individual registers. So if we look at address 68, you get the actual conductivity data. And if you look at register 9, or actually 8 as it would be, you'll get the transducer health. In this case, it's reading 0. This sensor is set up in autonomous mode, so we don't have to send a scan command to the sensor. So I'm just turning it on and off via a DTU. What we see is as we send the read request from the sensor, once the sensor's booted up and going, we'll get those exceptions returned, either the 08, 05 or 06 exceptions. There's your 05. The sensor's now started scanning, so now we get the 06 exception. These will be held there, and you'll keep getting the 06 until the sensor is ready to give you the first pH number, in which case everything will update as you'd expect.
Okay, so lots more details on the Modbus can be found on the website.
So all the addresses for the Modbus are there. You can actually send the setup string that Kay showed through utils through Modbus now. So you can set your sensor up on a Modbus platform with that unique string per setup.
The last thing to show you is the GUI, the graphical user interface. It can be downloaded from our website. In the support page, there's a GUI link with the download button there, and we've got one running here. We recommend you set the sensor up in utils first, the configuration that you want, and then you choose your COM port. All the information about the sensor that you saw before in utils will arrive here in this top box. We have a status box here on the right, which gives you the transducer health and the sensor health. This is green at the moment because everything's good, but will turn red if there's maintenance required. And then you've got your charts. We've got pH, temperature, and we can see salinity and conductivity. I'll show you how to get those. So the buttons at the top, we've got a start, stop, and a braid, which are our standard 3 kind of commands. We've got this button here, which is the view log output. So if we click on this, it shows you exactly the output of the sensor, the kind of raw output, which is quite useful sometimes to see. And we have the user interface settings. And this is where you can choose which charts you want to see. It also allows you to put some limits. So you can add limits to any of your metrics. If you just refresh after changing it, first of all, you can see that salinity and conductivity charts have arrived because we've turned them on. The limits are those green lines. So here is a zoom in button. You can see the 2 lines, which are the limits that we set on the other page. And as you can see, our pH is above the limit. So we've got this little alarm here to tell us that the pH is outside the predefined limit. If we change that up a bit to 9, refresh the browser, and then you'll see the green lines shifted up to 9, and your alert button has disappeared. And the final button is the sensor settings at the end, which allows you to set the date and time, or change the date and time, and change the scanning interval. But we recommend that you do this in utils really before you start the GUI. That's the best way.
Okay, so we often get asked by our customers, because we are calibration free, how do you verify the performance of the sensor before deploying it or sending it out to their customers? The way we do that is we run the sensor across a sweep of pH measurements from sort of 4 up to 9.5-ish in different salinities. So this is the data at 35 ppt. The black dots are a calibrated glass pH electrode. The glass electrode is calibrated using IUPAC standards. And we basically verify the performance of the sensor against that glass electrode, which is calibrated. All the sensors hold the same calibration, so we verify the performance of that calibration on that sensor against a calibrated glass electrode to make sure it's within specs before we ship it. We do that at a range of salinities. This is the data from a 0.5 ppt showing 6 sensors and the average across that range, again sweeping from about 4.8 up to 9. The decay at 9 in pH is purely because the solution at that salinity isn't stable and the actual pH of the solution is changing, and that was verified by a glass electrode. We have a customer who's trialing the version 10. This is only a short period of time, but they deployed it on an ocean setting for a period of 14 hours on a 15-minute delay, and we're getting much improved stability across that pH range. The sensor can be easily deployed onto various vehicles and telemetry units. If you saw our webinar earlier in the year, we highlighted some of those deployments. This is purely showing that we've attached the sensor to an ROV and placed it in the River Cam, or the local Cambridge River, and swam it around in the river for a period of time. We also get asked about our temperature calibrations, the way we temperature calibrate, and each sensor is individually temperature calibrated. We run the sensor across 2 thermocouples. Both of those are calibrated every 6 months. We run those across those standards, and we then put a calibration inside each sensor.
If there's any questions, please feel free to email us. We're always available to have a Teams meeting or to answer your emails. Don't hesitate to contact us.